celebrating 17 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Tom Satkowiak, Part 2.
Anything is possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill. Great stories about great people whose lives prove that anything is possible. Aunt Boots. Do you say aunt or aunt?
Aunt.
Aunt Boots. All right. This is Tom Satkowiak. He is the Assistant Athletic Director for Communications. What a story, man. Thank you for being back for Part 2.
Thanks for having me.
Let me pause in the story for just a minute. What a year the men's basketball program had. Oh, wow.
It was a very enjoyable run, and I've worked with a lot of teams over the years, and this is just a very unique and special group, and maybe even more so by what took place off the court. Just a team that was just the way the personalities came together and the love they had for one another, their faith, just a really, really special group. And so I think a lot of Tennessee fans enjoyed the ride all year, and ended probably a little sooner than most people had hoped for, but there is absolutely nothing for those guys to hang their head about. It was really a remarkable year.
Great season. We love Coach Barnes. Let's dig back into your story. So you said, you've got this cancer, not cancer, but you have this liver disease, and it's going to wipe you out, and it starts to take its toll on you. When did it start to take its toll on you physically?
Boy, I don't know if I could pinpoint an exact year. Maybe I would say around 2012 if I just had to kind of ballpark it. But see, what happens when your liver doesn't function the way that it should, it's kind of a domino effect, and a laundry list of other things start to take place. So it starts off with, you're itching all the time, and it's not an itching that any lotion is going to fix because it's not the skin. It's deeper than that. Your liver's not filtering out certain toxins, and so you're itching all the time. And then it affects your bone health. I developed osteoporosis, and so I would develop a lot of microfractures. I was in walking boots just about every year. It felt like basketball season would roll around, and I'd be, pretty up and active during the seasons, and next thing you know, I'd be in a walking boot because I'd have a microfracture. Or someone would come up behind me and kind of surprise me and give me a little hug, and it might, to you it would do nothing, but for me it would crack my rib. So there were a lot of things that started to happen, just a lot of different aspects of my health that were affected. Like I said, it was just a domino effect of different things in your body that aren't, really, it's not working the way that it ought to.
So if you take 1,000 little cuts, right? Every day there's some little something, it's something extra. I guess the cumulative effect of that is it really starts to affect mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, it does. It's tough to endure it. And I don't know. I just don't know how to articulate kind of, I'm sorry, I don't know how to articulate sort of just the way that it makes you feel, but you hit it spot on. It's just, it's tough, and every day it's something different, and so you keep, for me, work was an escape. Work was my normal. It was my time to just be normal, and I could be, one of the guys, and it was just, I had a job to do, and I tried to do it well, and it was a way to distract me from some of the things that when I went home and, sat on the couch and I had, swelling or pain, you deal with it as best you can, but then another day comes and it's another day to go to work and it's another distraction, and it kind of, work sort of becomes your escape. And that might sound odd, but that's how it was for me.
Because you have something to look forward to other than, it's kind of like I have neuropathy in my feet. But when I'm working and I'm having a good time working, or I'm really fully engaged, I don't think about my feet for just that period of time. But if I stop right now and think about my feet right now, I feel pain, right? But I don't feel it when I'm not thinking about it. And so I have something else to think about. So, yeah. And in terms of you articulating what it feels like, there's no way to express something that deep. I don't think words are at all adequate. I think that's why people groan because there are no words. Or I think your facial expression or posture, I think you articulated this pain pretty pretty accurately just sitting here today. The beautiful thing, though, is something happened that was pretty incredible. This is Tom Satkowiak. More in a moment on Anything is Possible.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up,
You have what's called a Meld Score, and your competitiveness to receive an organ is based on your score. And so you have to get sicker in order to have an opportunity to get better.
Right now, I wish I had some cabbage rolls.
Yes, you do.
I do, don't I? So we were right smack dab in the middle of your story. You were pushed right to the edge. Where's God in all of this as you're dealing with the fact that your liver is about to go out? And if the liver goes out, bye-bye, Tom.
I was raised Roman Catholic, and that was just part of the deal growing up, was that you're going to be in church on Sunday. And
which doesn't necessarily mean church is going to be in you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And that's very much the case.
Right.
You know, it was just an obligation. Let's go get my hour in. And it wasn't anything that I really felt an attachment to. And when I got to college, I no longer had that requirement. And so, of course, I wasn't going, and really had no spiritual life whatsoever for about 15 years. And it's amazing. God doesn't stop chasing you. And he eventually caught up to me, and he placed some people in my life, and there's three in particular that really, really made an impact on my personal faith journey. And that's Rick Barnes, Mark Pankratz, and Tim Miller. And through the three of them working in different ways, it really turned my life around, and you know, it changes everything when you can take the things that burden you and place them on God, and just trust and understand that he's got it taken care of. He's never going to give you more than you can handle together, you and him. And
let's talk about each of those three people, which we will in just a second. But tell me what happened with your health, because you found out you could get a liver transplant. And that's a game changer, because it can't fix it. But if we can send off to Atlanta and get the ports, that could change everything, right? So how'd you find out that you were a candidate? When did you find out? I understand that you were packing up to go to a big event. Was it SEC Media Days?
It was.
Right? And you're packing up to go to that, and you get word from Vanderbilt, I guess it was?
It was, yeah. I saw a hepatologist at Vanderbilt for more than a decade, Dr. David Rayford, and he's truly one of my guardian angels in life. But you have to kind of rewind about 4 years prior, so this would have been around 2015, I guess. Through the course of your liver journey, you have what's called a Meld Score, and that's mild end-stage liver disease. And your competitiveness to receive an organ is based on your score. And so you have to get sicker in order to have an opportunity to get better. And my score kind of hovered around a level for many, many years that wasn't competitive to receive an organ. And finally, as my liver health declined, my score sort of started to climb, and then you go through what's called a transplant evaluation, where you go to Vanderbilt for 3 days and you go through a battery of tests, and they're going to make the determination of, are we going to actually put you on the list or not? And so I went through that. My wife and I spent a few days in Nashville, and shortly thereafter got the call, you're officially on the list. And so that's a big step, just
you're
being
officially sick enough.
Yeah. Which is, it sounds terrible, but at the time it's wonderful, and because that's progress. And so I was on the list, and a year passes, another year passes, another year, and finally, after 4 years and 3 months of being on the list, I got that call that I can't describe the feeling, and then it's what it does to you when you finally get that call, and they say, hey, we've got an organ available. If you'd like it, you've got 6 hours to get here and have the surgery. And so that call came for me on October 17th, and it was SEC Basketball Media Day. I was about an hour away from going to pick up Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield and meeting Coach Barnes at the airport and spending the day in Birmingham. But those plans all got shot, and we kind of had to call an audible. And rather than head to Birmingham, my wife and I headed to Nashville, and the journey sort of began at that point.
Boom. Let's start with Coach Barnes. He was one of the people that said, you might want to try this God thing again.
He was. It's funny, people through the years, various people had ways of sort of trying to have that conversation with me. Do you go to church? Are you a Christian? And I had a really, really good and effective way of just kind of shutting those conversations down. But with Coach Barnes, it didn't work like that. He didn't get shut down. He didn't take the hints. And he continued to kind of, in a very, very deft way, would continue to kind of, well, do you think you're going to heaven? If you died today, do you think you'd be in heaven? And he just had a way of keeping that conversation going. And so he kind of got through to me. And we started having some really deep discussions, some really great discussions. And he would send me, he'd give me books to read. He'd send me clips on my phone of things to listen to or things to read. And it really started to kind of pique my interest. And he connected me with Tim Miller, the pastor at Severe Heights, and Mark Pankratz, who had been a basketball staff member and who's someone that I was close with. He was attending Severe Heights, and he kind of started to nudge me and invite Brooke and I to come to church. And that was a big step, was just going to church. There was something intimidating about just trying church again. And between the three of them, their efforts, we ended up going. And I remember after that first Sunday that we went to church, getting in the car afterwards and telling Brooke, that was pretty awesome. We should come back next week. And it's amazing what that led to.
So you get a liver transplant and a heart transplant.
There you go.
Right? I think the word says, Ezekiel says, I'll take the stony heart out of you and give you a heart of flesh and cause you to move in my direction. And it seems like that's what happened to and for you.
Absolutely.
Emotionally, what a roller coaster. How did it change you as a man?
It changed my whole outlook. I think before I came to trust Christ, I would describe it maybe as hopelessly treading water. But when you're able to turn things over to Him and trust in Him, you go from treading water to just faithfully enduring and understanding the outcome's already been decided. So we're going to ride this out and just trust that that He'll take care of it. And there's a particular piece of scripture, my power is made perfect in weakness. And you just realize it's okay. It's okay to be struggling. And it just gives you a sense of peace, I guess. Again, I'm kind of at a loss for words on it, but I feel like that domino had to fall before that transplant was ever going to happen. Like I said, God will chase you, and He was in that process of kind of stoking that fire in me and helping me to realize that I needed Him in order for me to kind of make any progress in my journey.
It's interesting. Christ worked 36 or 37 miracles, depending on how you count them. And it was interesting when Jesus meets the man beside the pool at Bethesda. He hasn't walked, right? He's paralyzed. And he asked him an interesting question. He said, do you want to be made whole? Not do you want to walk? And I think God is in the business of wholeness. I think man is in the business of miracles because we want to solve our problem, our situation, and He wants to fix us, right? And so for Him, the miracle you needed immediately was a liver. The miracle you need eternally is a heart. And His pursuit of you was connected to wholeness, not just health, if that makes any sense. And that's always been a hard one for me to navigate or negotiate, because when I'm going through whatever I'm going through, one of the bumper stickers I hate the most now is God is my co-pilot, right? He's not co anything, right? But God is really looking to make us whole and to give us wholeness, a fullness of faith, so we might have joy. And so, my producer, Chris Marion, he had these bracelets made up, and this phrase "Tagago," which stands for "Trust God and Go On," right? And
Amen.
it's a sweet thing to get to that place, because the moment we begin to trust God with that kind of ruthless and fearless intensity, you can go on. Life does go on. And so it's beautiful to hear you unpack the story. Really encouraging to me. Why don't we take a break? When we come back, I want to talk about what do we do now? New liver, new heart. Now what? Tom Satkowiak is my guest. More in a moment.
Coming up,
Just having that gratefulness and awareness of what a gift that is. When someone's last act on this earth is to make the decision that, hey, I'm going to give this gift of life to someone else.
Research says, they did this research study, and they would have the participants go into a room and put their foot in a bucket of ice water. And then they would measure the amount of time you could take the pain before you had to take your foot out. What they found is, if there was one other person in the room with you, you could withstand the pain twice as long, whether you knew them or not. If there was somebody bearing witness to what you were going through, it got even stronger if it was somebody that loved you. One name, Brooke. Talk about how she walked through all of this with you.
She's the biggest blessing in my life. She is in healthcare. She's a nurse anesthetist. And it's just amazing when I think of, God placed her in my life for a reason. And not to be my caregiver, but throughout this whole process, there were so many steps along the way, so many doctor's visits and procedures and things that you undergo. And I don't really speak that language, but having her along the way to sort of ask the questions that would never even dawn on me to ask a doctor, having her guidance at home, diagnosing, hey, something doesn't look right, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't seem right. She was amazing in that way. And it's not hyperbole to say that I don't know that I would be here if it wasn't for having her with me at every step of the way.
That's awesome. What's next? All kinds of possibilities now.
Yeah.
What have you learned when you get to this point now? What are the things that kind of stand out in your mind? You're like, Halloran, I know this. I know this for sure now. I want this now. I see this now. These are the possibilities that are emerging.
Well, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but we're not designed to understand God's timing. We're not meant to understand how he works. And there are things in life that we want fixed, and we want it now, but that may not be according to God's plan. And I didn't want to stay on the list for 4 years, but I think there was a spiritual maturation that was taking place when I was on that list and going through that and enduring that. And so I know for sure that we can trust him and that he's going to be there and he's got our back. I know that in some way, see, my job by nature, I'm a behind-the-scenes guy. I kind of make things happen behind the scenes. But in an odd way, my association with UT and the Power T and the basketball program has given me a platform. And so I think that I can use that platform to try to raise awareness for the importance of organ donation and how important it is for folks to become registered donors. It's funny, I had years to think about how I would feel knowing that someone had to die in order for me to have this kind of new lease on life. And you think about, how it will feel, but once you wake up and they tell you, hey, you got a new liver inside you, it has a really profound effect. And every day you're thinking about that donor, that donor's family. I lost where I was going, but it was, just having that gratefulness and awareness of what a gift that is. When someone's last act on this earth is to make the decision that, hey, I'm going to give this gift of life to someone else.
But if you think about it, and for those of you who are Christians and believe in what Christ did, ultimate donor, he gave his life, right?
That's the first time someone's really explained it that way, but that's a great, great illustration.
And I think as we've shared this conversation today, the silence between the words spoke louder than the words could speak, because it really does. When you consider how awesome it is, first of all, that someone would be a donor. Like, I'm going to leave my liver for somebody I'll never know, that 4 years plus later, it'll happen right there at the right time in the right place. You know, that is beyond words. It leaves you speechless. But when you match that donation to what was done for us on the cross, it leaves you speechless. There are no words.
No.
There's just taking your life from that moment forward and allowing how you live your life from that moment to speak, right? So thank you for bringing your life and letting it speak, and go Vols.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Satkowiak, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
We'll see you next time on Anything is Possible.